Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have another one of my amazing great friends and industry peers on today. Kind of seems to be the norm. I've got some amazing lineups set for you. Many have been on already. Many are upcoming. And I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to be able to bring you up-to-date information. Remember, if you're tuning in for the first time, welcome to the show. If you're back again, welcome back. Remember to bring all your friends, and we make it easy. They can go to my webpage, drjeffreyburke.com. Once you're there, you can save the webpage on your home screen, which is easy. And then when you tap on it, if you tap on the Honest Health logo, it'll take you directly to Spotify where you can listen to the audio of the shows. Or if you tap on the YouTube logo, you can actually go ahead and watch every interview there. So whatever you're looking for, if you have time to listen or time to watch, it doesn't matter. I want you to go there and learn and pass it on to everybody that you know, because it is about getting healthy, being healthy, and staying healthy. And I hope you'll take the time to partake in these wonderful interviews. Well, today my friend Rob Seeman is with us, and you're going to really enjoy this show today. We're going to be talking about a lot of fun stuff. A background of him, of course, he's been working in the natural products industry for nearly 30 years. As a store owner, sales broker, product educator, and formulator, he has been and is an advocate of using natural health modalities as a first line of defense for all people and the planet. He currently owns Whole Earth Marketing in Chicago. He's a product formulator and a partner at the Food Movement, and maintains a podcast called Whole Earth Radio and the blog Botanical Nutrition. Help me welcome my guest. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Hey, Dr. Jeff. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so glad you're here today. And I did want to mention one more thing. You are involved in Positively Natural.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I am on the board of Positively Natural Network, which this year is producing the Naturally Independent Expo in Palm Springs, October 25th and 26th.
Wonderful. I've been to the last couple of years in Las Vegas, but I don't think I'll make it this year, but I wanted to make sure people are aware of it. And I will mention it when we get closer to it as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for supporting.
Oh, my pleasure. So let's talk a little bit about, you and I both have great longevity in the industry, and, things that we did many, many decades ago. And you and I both have many of those. Things that we did back then are different now, probably more obsolete. There's probably new things and new discoveries, obviously, since then. How would you describe the state of the industry now compared to where we were?
I would say it is ever shifting.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be, I always say the first, 10, maybe 15 years that I was in the health food business, like nothing changed. I mean, very little changed. The model, the major players, brand sets, a lot of things stayed the same, amazingly similar, if not exactly the same, for a long period of time. And since that point, it's just been a constant state of flux. And I think that's sort of the world too. Things like the internet and e-commerce entering the picture shook up everyone's world.
I think I agree with you. And it was kind of status quo for a long time. And, but with those changes, we've learned new discoveries. We've learned new delivery systems, new ways of taking things, new mindsets. People think you've been doing this for as long as we have, that we've stopped learning. And it's not the truth, because we're continually learning, because there's things that have been used in parts of the world for 100 or 1,000 years, and we may be hearing about it for the very first time. So open ears, open heart, open mind are things that we have to be able to be in this industry.
Totally agree. Yeah, that's what kept me here from day one. After working in a record store for, during college and things, the first time I worked in a health food store, I just learned so much my first day, my first week. I mean, new whole modalities and ways of looking at the world, and really just learning how much there was to learn. And
very, very true.
I don't know, today I couldn't picture myself doing anything else.
I mentioned this before on a previous podcast, but I have a friend and his friend said, well, how hard can it be to work in a health food store? And I said, really? And I said, what do you do? He goes, I'm an accountant. And I said, okay, you know your numbers. Once you learn them, your numbers are never going to change. And the process to getting to your bottom line is never going to change. And he goes, well, that's true. And I said, now imagine working in a health food store where you have thousands among thousands of products on shelves, new things coming in, new ways of taking it, liquids, liposomals, capsules, soft gels, powders, all these things coming in different forms. And you not only have to know what they are, you have to know what they are when they're mixed with something else. And you have to also understand who and cannot and will use the products and who can't because of medication, who can't because of age or digestibility. And his head was started spinning around. And I said, yeah, I said, exactly. So I'll tell you what, I'll put what we have to learn up against what you have to learn. And I said, thank God you do it because none of us like math anyway. So we love what we do, but, give it credit where credit's due.
Yeah, and I think the other part of working, on the retail end is I learned to be a better listener.
Mhm.
When you have someone walking in that has a health concern, I didn't have any what you'd call a bedside manner or the ability to talk to someone about their health, not that we're practicing medicine, but you get what I'm saying.
Of
You're
course.
listening to someone's health concerns. You have to be in a different space. And then where my thinking went from those early days is, how can I help this person? How can I, rather than just give them a product to buy, maybe the answer is doing yoga or loving yourself or getting more sleep or drinking more water, all the above, and we can't have all the answers, but we'll get more answers if we listen to people.
The words of my grandmother, of course, the words of many before her, you have two ears and one mouth to listen twice as much as you talk. Now, that's been hard for me because I talk, but I did learn how to be a listener. And you can get many of the answers to your questions to help people more effectively if you just listen. It's so true to your point.
Yeah, and I think that is just one of those life lessons. Our industry has so much to offer because it is a holistic approach. There's no magic bullet, there's no one type of solution, there's no, what does Tom Dodot say? There's no one size fits all nutrition.
Yeah, he does say that. I've heard him say that many times. Let's talk a little bit about how people's interests have changed. I think over the last decade or 2 decades, a lot more people have decided that, they're working with their doctors, they may be getting pharmaceutical protocols, but they're starting to open their ears and their minds to maybe a more natural way of doing things. Many of the physicians that are around today, many of them have opened their minds as well. It's not, uncommon to see a handwritten prescription from a doctor for vitamin D or omega-3s or fish oil or something along the way. They're now sending people into health food stores for. So there's been a little bit of a turn there. And I think there's been a little bit more open-mindedness, if you will.
Yeah, I think so. I think, once upon a time, there was an idea of integrative medicine. And there is still a movement in that respect. But we also got a lot of pushback from the mainstream medical community. They segments of the mainstream medical community are very anti-supplement, and they will give misinformation and discourage people from taking natural remedies, supplements. So the folks who are really, like you are saying, comfortable to prescribe, to recommend, to direct their patients to take these things are kind of going out on a limb because there really isn't an organized movement the way that pharmaceutical companies have an organized movement to sell drugs. So I say all that to say I really commend those healthcare practitioners who have been trained in mainstream medicine but are crossing over to more alternative means of helping people. And I really attribute it to the benefit that they see in the science and, even just anecdotally. If you know somebody, who's seen real benefit from supplementation, it really leads some credibility to the idea.
Yeah, and I think that's very, very true. I remember, when I first started way back in the early 80s. Yeah, Lord. I remember, and I've mentioned this before, it's a great story. I remember being at a health food store working there, and I was doing inventory, helping them after hours. And there were knocks at the back door. Now, this was in Westwood, right by UCLA,
Mm.
and knocks on the back door. And I just told the owner, I said, "Who's that?" And they said, "Oh, it's okay. It's just my doctors from UCLA." And I said, "What?" So she said, "Yeah, they come to the back door because they don't want their colleagues to see them in the front of the store." And I'm just like, "Oh my Lord." So they would come in, they'd have their stuff ready, they'd get their vitamins and stuff, and then they would leave. And I'm thinking, I thought that was just the wildest thing way back then. But I understand. They were kind of hitting an uphill battle at that point. It's a lot easier today, but back then it was a bit of a task.
Yeah, and there's so many different angles. I mean, there's so many brands, and what does the mainstream practitioner focus in on what makes a good brand? If they don't have a tight connection to the natural products industry, it's interesting to see what practitioner brands will sometimes emphasize. I'll see different certifications that I've not necessarily seen a lot of and say, oh, okay, well, we have within the industry a number of criteria we look for, like GMP, right?
Mhm.
Like third party testing. And those aren't necessarily the same things that practitioners look at, or they may emphasize depending on the practitioner and what they've been educated about.
Well, let's take this in a kind of a different direction. You're a wonderfully specialist in a lot of different areas, and I want to get as much of your information out as I can today because, the great idea about having this podcast is having a general place where people can go and they can learn. Answer some of the questions, learn things they didn't think they wanted to know about, and maybe be reminded of things that they used to know, but life got in the way and we forgot things. So let's talk a little bit about minerals. Interesting thing about minerals is when most people think about nutrition, they usually think about vitamins. That's kind of what they think about first. And minerals, although amazingly important, somehow get kind of pushed on the back burner a little bit. They don't get the direct, focus, the spotlight like they should. So let's talk minerals today. And, minerals have a lot of different categories and a lot of different sources and a lot of different ways of taking them and different kinds of minerals. So I'm going to let you take it.
Wow, that is such a great topic. And I think you're absolutely right. Way more people know about the importance of vitamins,
Mhm.
even though we have a lot of room to bridge gaps there as well, but then they do about minerals. And when they think about minerals, they probably think about the macro minerals, right? They're probably thinking about calcium, magnesium has become very popular,
Mhm.
with all these electrolyte products on the market. Sodium and potassium are getting some spotlight. But if you tell them that there are over 70 minerals that their body would naturally be getting just from the natural world if we hadn't, modernized everything and reduced the mineral spectrum, they'd probably be surprised. I think
Yeah.
most people are surprised. Wow, 70 plus minerals, and um, how much of those do they need? Some of them not very much, right? But it is interesting even within trace minerals, because that's what we're talking about, right? The major minerals and then the micro minerals. And with the trace minerals, that broad spectrum to me has been the takeaway, right? It's
Mhm.
not that you need a lot of ytterbium or a lot of rubidium, although you see some interesting applications of supplementing with trace minerals like chromium and different other individual minerals. But really, I think if there's an absence of one thing in the modern, industrialized world, it is that broad spectrum of trace minerals that you would have if you grew biodynamic crops, if you rotated crops and were drinking from a pure mountain stream rather than big agra, purified water, which rightfully so, it probably should be purified, but does that remove any mineral content that was there to begin with? So you're leading towards this picture of mineral deficiency that's sort of like an invisible epidemic because it's not a deficiency of one thing. Like you talked about D3 and how the mainstream is kind of saying, well, that might be a thing. If you don't have enough D3, we can point to deficiency syndrome, but a deficiency of a broad spectrum of nutrients is kind of outside the scope of anything they can really test for, so it's sort of, I feel like it's the best kept secret in natural medicine is this broad spectrum of trace minerals.
Is there a good way that you recommend, a better way? And how would those trace mineral categories break down? I know they break down into different kinds of categories.
Yeah, that's a really, great point. I think, everyone wants to get their nutrition with food these days. So people will
Sure.
say, "Oh, I'm eating lots of superfoods. I'm eating lots of nutrient dense foods." And if they're grown organically, biodynamically, that is a good way. Then they will have that kind of trace mineral
Mhm.
content. Things like seaweeds, algae, even sea moss, which is wildly popular, nori, dulse, any of these things are great mineral dense foods, right?
Mhm.
They are rich in minerals. And so just eating those foods, you're getting an increased intake of trace minerals. But I think the idea of supplementing, especially in as much as our water is essentially mineral deficient. So if you are to add some trace minerals to your water, and that's what I've been doing for probably almost 30 years, because someone made that point to me. Hey, that's great, you're drinking that RO water. I'm sure it's very, very clean. It also has no mineral content whatsoever. So you
Naked.
might want to put some in there.
Mhm.
And fast forward to today, you talk about the different interests. Everyone's focusing on electrolytes because, hey, we've gotten the message that if we're minerally deficient, we can feel it when we exercise. It takes us longer to recover because we don't have enough even sodium or potassium. But to realize all those 70 plus minerals, those are electrolytes too, right? So there's more to the picture than you would get from a Gatorade bottle.
Well, and I'm right there with you. I've been utilizing trace minerals in my beverages for a long time, and I know that I've talked with many of my guests over the years, and we talk about making the water wetter, by putting things in it that make a difference. Because if you're going to take the time to put them in your body, let them do something for you, and it does make a difference. People think all the time without minerals, the only thing that happens to you is you may get a leg cramp, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many different health conditions that could be mineral deficiency connected. Of course, other things, but part of the mix. So when you're talking about these minerals, obviously there's categories. I don't know if a lot of people are used to hearing about things like fulvic and humic minerals. I'd love for you to talk about that because it seems like they've cycled and then they kind of disappear and then they come back again. And, I think there's a lot of people, probably a whole new group of people out there that may not be familiar with them. How do you feel about talking about them?
Oh yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. To me, humic and fulvic minerals, and I work with the food movement. We have
Mm-hmm.
our black earth minerals that are humic acid, fulvic acid, and over 70 trace minerals. But I tell people, the main thing is that you get some trace minerals because everyone is so deficient in it. The great thing about humic acid and fulvic acid in those black minerals, because humic is very black in color. So when you add it to the water, you actually see it darkening the water. Freaks
Mm-hmm.
some people out
It
occasionally.
does.
With fulvic acid, it's a little lighter. It's more brownish in color, but still, it's making your water look more like tea or coffee or something rather than just plain water.
Mm-hmm.
But those organic acids that give it that color are the product of the breakdown of plant material over thousands, sometimes millions of years. So you're totally right about them cycling in the marketplace, because I remember 30 years ago, they had something on the shelf called Willard water.
I remember.
I think it's still sold today, and they have different kinds of Willard water, I believe. But the dark one is the one
Mhm.
that's extracted from lignite, which is exactly like the humates that the food movement is selling and that other companies sell. And the whole idea is the fulvic acid and humic acid are like chaperones, right? Fulvic acid in particular is this amazing chaperone molecule. It's why on the natural agriculture side, humic and fulvic are really great fertilizers. So a lot of cannabis growers know about humic acid. You can tell if you start talking and somebody goes, "Oh yeah," that they may be some kind of grower who has seen that this stuff is like you could say a supercharging agent for living things. So it could be plants, it could be animals. Plants and animals both have cells in common, right? So the ability to carry nutrients into cells and waste products out of the cells is this unique ability of humic fulvic minerals. And so you take something we're already lacking. Everybody needs these trace minerals, probably not getting them. And then you put humic and fulvic into the mix, or I should say, nature puts them into the mix, right? Because this all occurs, we didn't really invent anything here. This is nature's own creation. And, it has been used in various forms for thousands of years. Lately it's been popular to use shilajit, which is a form of humates, which, how that originated in Ayurveda was that in ancient times in India and different places, they noticed that these monkeys were eating this black mineral pitch from the side of a mountain, and that the monkeys who ate that were way more energetic and healthy than just the average monkey. And so that's where a lot of traditional medicine came from, was watching the plants and the substances the animals took in. And so shilajit, and mumio as it's called in TCM, is really just humic and fulvic mineral pitch that is harvested from very high altitudes in these mountains. So it's humans humans imitating nature, I guess, or we're mimicking what the animal kingdom is doing and taking advantage of these natural things all around us. And it's kind of fascinating when you realize that this is trending now. Shilajit's becoming popular now, and it's like it's a new thing. I guess we get used to this after a while, right? What's old is new again.
Do you feel comfortable with recommending to people that they use both fulvic and humic together?
Oh yeah, and the thing that makes the black earth minerals from food movement different are that they always have humic acid, fulvic acid, and those over 70 minerals. Nice. Because that's how they occur together in nature. Other companies have focused on isolating fulvic acid, for example, having like a fulvic acid solution or different kinds of more specific extract, or a less than a broad, narrower spectrum, I guess I should say, of extraction. Because you can do that if you use different solvents or even just different pH. You can take the humic out. But when you look at how beneficial both of them are, humic acid and fulvic acid, closely related, always occur together in nature, and they both have benefits. It really is sort of, I guess it's a difference between that holistic point of view. If nature put it there, it's probably there for a reason. That's kind of our general philosophy. If you don't need to take it out, why would you? Whereas the reductionist, more pharma-like model is, there's one active constituent here, and we're going to find it, and we're going to make it ours, and we're going to focus on that.
I think I would rather side with Mother Nature. She knew what she was doing. It's so funny. I tried some of the shilajit. It was kind of like a dark resin. And I tried it in that form, and I really liked it. And can men and women use it equally, comfortably?
Yeah, on my podcast on Whole Earth Radio, I just had Joyce Moran from U Theory not too long ago, and she was talking about their shilajit, where they actually have a product for men and a product for women. And she said, but it's really, if you go back and you look at the traditional use, it was like a secret soma. It was a rasayana in Ayurveda. It's good for everything and everybody. Not that there's any panacea out there, but no magic bullet. But hey,
True.
if there is one, I think a broad spectrum of minerals along with an amazing plant, material chaperone like fulvic acid, might be it. If there is one, that certainly could be a good candidate because, I had a naturopath tell me at one point, I was in his office, talking about things, and he grabbed the black earth fulvic and holds this up, and he says, this is the supplement that makes all your other supplements work better. And I just thought, man, you should write advertising copy. We need like your face holding this bottle. But it was his
Here we go.
honest opinion. It's what he was telling
Mhm.
his clients, and he probably still does buy it by the case and give almost every one of his patients that as part of their health regimen, right? You need a multivitamin, you need a broad spectrum of trace minerals, you probably need some probiotics, you probably need enzymes. I mean, depending on what's going on with you,
Mhm.
you may have an extensive health protocol, but as you said at the beginning, I mean, it starts from having those essential nutrients, having those vitamins and those minerals. And then once we get those deficiencies eliminated, we can talk about which botanicals, which superfoods, which things will enhance, our lives.
If you were going to classify Shilajit, it's funny. I actually was listening to a podcast and the lady kept calling it an herb, and I was like, no, So, and how would you classify it as a mineral? Would you call it as a decaying fossilized structure? What would you put it under?
So, and this is the way I try to help people understand Shilajit and how it relates to things like black earth minerals, like black water, that BLK water that you see
Mhm.
out there, any kind of humic fulvic mineral pitch. I mean, it's generally, a thick material when it starts. They are very old plant material,
Mhm.
and the technical term for them is humates. Humates is that raw mineral form. So Shilajit, as generally refers to the kind of mineral pitch that comes from over in these very high mountains in Asia. Whether it's the Altai Mountains or other mountain ranges, but it is unique to that part of the world. But
Mhm.
what they have in common with humates from the United States or anywhere else, and to some extent in your compost pile in the backyard, right? You've got humic acid, fulvic acid, and whatever trace mineral is in the plant material that's breaking down. It's usually a very broad spectrum, but also these things like carbon 60, with those really interesting fullerene molecules that look like little soccer balls or geodesic domes. So they named them after Buckminster Fuller and called them Bucky balls. Fullerene is the scientific name for those carbon 60 molecules, but they say it's the most antioxidant substance on Earth, which we've heard before. But it's really amazing that the cycle of life, to me, you have something living, and then it breaks down, and what is it reduced to? It's reduced to the minerals. If you go back to ancient times, after they extracted an herb, the spagyrics, right? Paracelsus made these spagyrics where they would burn the mark after they made the extraction, and then they would extract the ash of the plant just to get the mineral content, because after all of the other compounds were gone, the things that were left were those minerals.
I love it. No, thank you for that. That's great clarity. And I just think it's becoming more and more essential. For the longest time, we did have decent soil. We had soils that were rotated. We had ways of growing. Even our livestock were feeding on beautifully lush and fully, loaded with mineral vegetation. And we just don't have it anymore. And we're at a point right now where it's funny. I go back to visit my family, and I will go out in the garden that was my childhood garden. My brother put so much stuff into this soil, which is rich. And I will literally sit in the middle of the garden and just eat everything I could reach, because you eat a tomato out of a garden where the soil is beautiful. There's taste. You go to some of the stores today and you get a tomato, there's nothing. You have to actually make it taste like something. And it's just like empty calories. So when people are trying, to do things right, and this is another point, for the longest time, my viewpoint was always to do organic if you could afford it. And I still think organic is a great way to go. But when people ask me why I like organic, it's probably not for the reason that they think. It's not for the reason of the soil being that much better, because many times their soils are as unhealthy as the pesticide farm 20 miles down the road. The only difference is they're not using pesticides and chemicals. And that's a big enough reason for me to go organic. But I mean, our soils are unbelievable. My friend bought a place up in Montana, way up in a higher elevation. Nobody's ever lived there. Bought some real basic bland area, and he did like 100 by 100 area on a landing, dug it up, rototilled it last summer, and he planted a garden. And his tomatoes were this big because the soil was dark and rich. It was just virgin soil. He said, I put in 5 zucchini plants and I had like 800 zucchinis. He said, I couldn't give them all away. He said, so he goes, I made a chart, and I'm going to rotate my crops and be good and do it the right way. He has cows and horses. So, I mean, steer manure, cow manure, all that's going to be going in there, and vegetation, grinding up all the husks from the corn plant. But he's going to do it right. But like I said, there are places that are like that, but that's not the norm. We need to fill this void.
There is a book called Secrets of the Soil, and it was written by the guys that wrote The Secret Life of Plants. Mm-hmm. And, in this, but they really go into this turning point in modern industrialization where there was a movement, and a lot of it apparently came out of Russia, where they call the humates that are in the soil Chernozem, right? And it's the black soil, like burned soil. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to use a more dynamic model, and there was that kind of movement. The movement that came out of the States and what we have today in big agra is what? N, P, and K. Mm-hmm. That's really the only minerals that, or elements, I should say, that really matter, other than, sunlight and oxygen, and obviously, but there was no focus on anything biodynamic, anything like there was, you would think at that point, and this is where we took an evolutionary U-turn, right? We did the same thing with our food supply in terms of how we treat it once it's grown, right? We went to margarine instead of butter, grass-fed butter or something like that. So there was this better living through chemicals, I think, was the model that we were focusing on. And they did the same thing with agriculture. They said, there's no real value to any, look, NPK, like they can make these giant crops. We can grow really big crops that have no taste, and all that really matters is you'll be able to produce a product that you can sell.
Yep. It's weird, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm blessed, and I'm sure you are as well, that we were raised at a time when food was better, and, food was actually food, not like food stuff like it is today. And, you really got to give it to the fast food and the processed food manufacturers, because they have really learned how to make nothing and then nothing good taste wonderful. And people love it for the flavor. And many people will say, it's how I am. It's what I eat. It's what I like, even though you can make amazing food taste really, really good too. So, and I think people are stressed and, people got a lot on their plate, but it's not good stuff.
You're so right. And I think we really have to meet people where they are.
True.
And I think we have. I think that is one area, you talk about how CPG has maybe done us all a favor. I think making some of the more esoteric functional foods and nutraceuticals and things like lion's mane, you can actually find in a mainstream grocery store. Mm-hmm. It may be in a ready-to-drink beverage, but hey, you have access to these things. Yeah, baby steps, we'll have them grow in their own eventually, right? But there has to be, what would you call it? Like an entry point, right?
Yeah,
for people to get turned on to, and then they start seeing some benefit. I'm drinking this lion's mane every day. I think I really feel some benefit. And then it's sort of like, what else do you have? What else is there in this natural realm? And then if once they open Pandora's box, it's like your head explodes like ours did at some point many years ago, of like, you just can't believe how much there is you didn't know about.
Absolutely true. Question. As far as the minerals, obviously we know as adults we are definitely lacking. How do you feel about younger adults, even into the teenage years and stuff, using those minerals as well?
Wow, that is a really great point, because one of the Black Earth products is the Black Earth Zeolite, and it has come to my attention many times over that there are parents of children on the spectrum that are getting great benefit from, in particular, zeolite mixed with humic fulvic minerals. I'll just say it because that's what I know to be true. And I know this because I hear it from the parents, and the parents are talking about noticeable benefits, right? So they're telling me this. I'm not trying to tell them. I'm learning from the parents of these children. And so I theorize, well, zeolite has some specific properties. We haven't talked about that one, but it's detoxifying, right? It's has some binding properties, adsorbent. It may be binding onto some kind of pathogen or a positively charged thing like a heavy metal that's building up. Maybe that's going on, I could theorize. But it also might be because in that product, there's also a broad spectrum of trace minerals.
Yeah.
It could be detoxification, but it also could be the nutrification of these micro minerals, that maybe there was some micro deficiency in that child's nervous system. We just really don't know, because some of those things, it's outside of the scope of what we do, right? But even if you were in a clinical situation, I don't know, some of those things are diagnosable. To find a micro mineral deficiency, I think a lot of times they're knowing that minerals are safe, that they're essential nutrients, they're trying these things. And then when they see benefit, it's like, well, that worked. We may not know exactly the mechanism of action of improving that child's functioning, but the testimonial is pretty powerful.
Well, and to your point, Rob, there's a better chance today that health conditions are going to be linked to life choices and lifestyle, and deficiencies and voids and vacancies, more than things that we have an abundance of, because there's chances are we're lacking in many areas. And I know people that have used your products. I know people that have used, Humic and fulvic. They've used the zeolite. I have people that I know that have made changes in their life that have been amazing, and they're noticeable changes. And I love to do what you do. I listen, give me feedback, because I can give you all the information and the tools. Number one, you have to do it, and you have to be consistent with it, and then you need to give me feedback so I know how you're doing. But we get some of our best feedback from people that have done it personally, or someone very close to them has. So I think that's really important. So do me a favor. How do people get a hold of you? Talk about where your podcast is, and mention the date again for the Positively Natural show.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah. So Whole Earth Radio is the podcast. It's anywhere you find podcast, Apple Podcast and whatnot, and then also on YouTube.
Okay.
And then I got to have you on sometime, by the way, because that would be super fun. And Botanical Nutrition is my blog. It's at botanicalnutrition.org. The food movement is at foodmovement.com. And as you mentioned there, oh my gosh, really excited about the Naturally Independent Expo in Palm Springs, October 25th and 26th. And, retailers, brands, even just individuals should really come out to Palm Springs. I just found out there's this memorial for the Braggs, I believe, for Paul and Patricia Bragg there in Palm Springs. And I've never seen it, but I'm really interested in making pilgrimage to that, just because, all of these amazing, this is what people like yourself and people that came before us, there's been this lineage of it's sort of like the oral tradition, right? It's like, now we're talking on the internet. It's different than 100 years ago, but the essence of it is the same. When I talk to you, I get the information of everybody that came before you and that came before us, and we're passing it on. And just to be some small part of that, it's such an honor, and to see and to know your place in that continuum. It's humbling, but it also gives you some faith in the future. I think the idea that, sometimes things look bleak, like maybe things are going in the wrong direction, but life is cyclical, isn't it? I mean, it's, what do they say? People say I speak in cliches too much, but always darkest before the dawn. But I think it's that cyclical thing. Like you said, people are getting back into natural medicine because they found out the other stuff wasn't working for them.
Truth.
And they get out of balance and they say, well, what else is there? And I'm just happy to be a part of the solution in whatever way I can.
So do me a favor. I ask all my guests, leave me with a thought for the day. It could be anything that means something to you that you want to share with everybody that watches the podcast.
I would say it's hard to be angry, in a bad mood, depressed, or any other negative feeling if you're 100% focused on being grateful for all of the blessings, the gifts, just being alive today. That's a gift that not everybody gets.
Yeah, and a lot of us said we've lost a lot of people way too early along the way. So thank you for that. Rob, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. This has been so much fun. We got to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Will you come back?
I would love to. And I'd love to have you on Whole Earth Radio, and we can pick up the conversation there.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. It's the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke. Remember, tell your friends. Have them go to my webpage, drjeffreyburke.com. We made it easy for you. All you have to do is you can click on the Honest Health logo. It'll take you right to Spotify. You can listen to the audio of any of the shows. And you can also click on the YouTube logo and come and watch our gorgeous faces in person, on the YouTube channel, and see all your favorite people, and hopefully walk away with, even if it's one good point that you learned, because when I'm bringing on people that have this much knowledge, the best minds in the industry, you're going to walk away with some good information. Oh, and while you're there, click on the likes and the subscribes and all that. This is new to me. I'm not used to having my face. I've been used to radio. So if there's things to click them, and then come back and bring your friends along with us. My guest today, Rob Seeman. Make sure you have everybody watch this podcast when it posts. Rob, have a great day.
Thanks, Dr. Jeff. Have a great day, too.
Thank you, sir.
All right, take care.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.